What's up, guys? We are heading to Australia for the rematch between Dricus Du Plessis and Sean Strickland. And I think the two title fights are fine, like Dricus versus Strickland should be a good fight, 50-50, competitive. Zhang Weili versus Tatiana Suarez is one of the most anticipated female fights, in my opinion. We've been wanting to see this fight for a very long time. But then it falls off into the quality of an early prelim card. The biggest Oceania fighter on the card is maybe Justin Tafa, or Jimmy Crute, or maybe Jake Matthews. The two title fights have no one from the region over there, but even though it doesn't have the name value, these kind of cards could actually perform well. We've seen it many times. It's not the names that make the fights great, it's just how the fighters perform, and most of it is just matchmaking. And I think some of these fights are well made. There's a total of 13 fights on the card, and it's going to have the usual time slot. Main card starts 10 p.m. Eastern, early prelims at 6 p.m. Eastern, and hopefully the fights perform well. So the prospect of the night, the best prospect of the card, I believe, is Alexander Topuria. He seems like a very good fighter. He has good boxing, good grappling, he has good punching power, but the only thing is his record does seem to be padded. If you look at all the wins and losses of his opponents, it's something crazy, it's something like 18-60. It's insane. Now, that doesn't mean that Topuria is not a good fighter. I mean, Khabib had a similar thing come into the UFC, and now Khabib is one of the greatest of all time. So it doesn't mean that Topuria is not good. The stake of the night, the fighter that needs a win, is absolutely Jimmy Crute. He has not won a fight since 2020. He's 0-3-1. No wins, 3 losses, 1 draw in his last 4 fights. He's been finishing all of his losses, so if he loses this one, the UFC might cut him. The fighter of the night, hard to pick between the two main eventers, so Dricus and Strickland. Competitive fight, most likely going to be another 50-50 contest where either fighter could win. A lot of people think that Dricus might have the edge this time and beat Strickland soundly, but there's a lot of people that think Strickland can make a few adjustments and absolutely win this fight as well. So I could see the fight not being as close as it was the first time. I think there will be a definitive winner, but it's all going to come down to which fighter makes the better adjustments, who has the better fight IQ. The banger of the night, the most explosive fun fight on the card, I believe, is Justin Tafa versus Telson Teixeira. Both knockout artists, finishers, heavyweights, that's pretty much it. The sleeper of the night, the fight that is under the radar, I believe is Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado. That's going to be an excellent fight, man. Definitely tune in for that one. And the fight of the night, the best overall fight, I believe is by far the main event. Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. And with that, let's go right to the predictions of the first fight. Park Hyung-sung versus Niamdragal Tumendembrel. But I'm going to go with Park. I think he's the better striker of the two. They're both good on the ground, but Park is very fast to get the back and go for the rear naked choke. Tumendembrel is wild in the stand-up. He'll throw out winging punches, which I think is perfect for Park to counter those with a really good counter left hook. He has excellent body shots, shown when he fought Shannon Ross. The only thing, though, is the last time he's fought was in 2023. At least Tumendembrel had a fight in 2024, a split decision loss to Carlos Hernandez. So Tumendembrel definitely has the punching power and the well-roundedness to make this fight competitive, but I think that Park is the faster fighter and the more technical striker. The fact that he's really good with his counterpunching is going to give him such a big advantage in this fight. So I'm going to go with Hyung-sung Park by unanimous decision. And then we go to the fight between 6-foot lightweights, Quinlan Selkild versus Anshul Jubli. Both fighters only have 1 loss in their careers, but Quinlan's loss was his MMA debut. Jubli lost his last fight to Mike Breeden in the 3rd round. He gassed out, which could be an issue in this Quinlan fight because Jubli is well-rounded. He has good offensive striking, good jab, 1-2, puts combinations together, solid fundamentals. But Quinlan also has really good fundamentals. He's very good as a counterpuncher. He has excellent wrestling, good submissions, and I believe he hits harder as well. He has more knockout power. Jubli might have a slight speed advantage, but not that much. The biggest difference between them two, the reason why Quinlan's going to win this fight is that Jubli's striking defense isn't the greatest, isn't that great. He keeps his head up tall, doesn't really move his head that much. He doesn't guard his head as well as Quinlan does either. Quinlan will guard his head. Quinlan will hold his hands up, allowing him to brace for impact, defend the shots, and go under for takedowns if he has to. He's very good from the clinch. He has excellent punches in the back foot, decent kicks as well. I'm going to go with Quinlan in this fight by a 3rd round TKO. And then with Kevin Jousset versus Jonathan McKelliff. I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset. I think he has sharper striking overall. McKelliff can be very wild with his punches. From southpaw, he throws out winging right hooks, big left straights, telegraphs his punches a lot, but he's mostly a grappler. He'll go under for the double legs, whether he's being pressured back or going forward. Very good on the ground, excellent submissions, but Kevin Jousset, although he stands up very tall and he throws those straight punches down the center very precisely, he has an excellent base. He has very good balance, excellent judo. It could be difficult to get him to the ground. And a fighter who goes into the clinch as much as McKelliff does and goes for that many takedowns might run into the kryptonite that is Kevin Jousset, who's even better in the clinch. So I'm going to go with Kevin Jousset, landing precise punches throughout the fight, jabs and straights and uppercuts, defending the takedowns, reversing McAuliffe on the fence, landing knees from there, maybe getting a judo throw or two, but ultimately winning the fight by decision. And then we go to Cody Steele versus Rong Zhu. This should be a good fight. Cody Steele's well-rounded, he has good wrestling, decent boxing, but mixes it up well and has great cardio too. Kind of like a technical brawler, but he sticks to some of the fundamentals in boxing. He has a good double leg, good on the ground. Rong Zhu, though, has more snap with his punches. He fights from longer range, decent takedown defense, but he lacks a lot of volume. I think that's the biggest thing going for Cody Steele. He's going to put a lot of pressure on Rong Zhu, throwing straights and hooks, going under those counter punches for takedowns, just mixing up the game with higher volume and not gassing out whatsoever. So I'm going to go with Cody Steele by unanimous decision. Should be a good fight. And then we go to Alexander Topuria versus Colby Thicknessy. This is one of the best fights on the entire card, and a fight that's getting a lot of hype because Ilia Topuria is going to be in his brother's corner, Alexander Topuria, and Alexander Volkanovski is going to be in Colby's corner. So not only is it a contest between which of these two is going to be the better fighter, but it's also kind of like a competition between who's the better coach, Ilia Topuria or Alexander Volkanovski. Now, of course, it doesn't mean one coach is better than the other. It takes a whole team to help the fighter in the training camp, and Ilia is only one part of the team. But it's going to be fun with the competition between these two featherweight greats. This should be a good fight, but I'm going to go with Alexander Topuria. The guy fights like a bulldog. The guy fights very similar to Ilia. He has a lot of punching power, very good on the ground, good double legs, good boxing skills, moves exactly like Ilia does. The way he bounces forward and back, holds his hands up, the way he throws the right overhand, the mechanics are nearly identical to Ilia. And the thing about Colby is he's not as powerful, he's not as physically strong. He moves around a lot, he throws good kicks, decent counter punching, but he's mostly a grappler. He has a good back take, fast submissions. He has a well-timed double leg though. He could get under Topuria's punches, landing the takedown and try to get his back, but I can see Alexander Topuria putting the pressure on Colby, backing him to the fence, and laying those crushing punches, getting him out of there in like the second or third rounds. So I'm gonna go with Alexander Topuria by a second round TKO. Then we have Kong Wong versus Bruna Brasil, one of the fighting nerds. Kong Wong has the striking advantage. She is supposed to be one of the best strikers in the women divisions, but Bruna Brasil is a decent striker as well. She has good movement, good kicks. She's very fast and athletic with her shots, but does she have the wrestling? Because she is going to need it. I don't see her outstriking Kong Wong. Kong Wong hits too hard, she's too technical, but she did get hurt by Gabriela Fernandez on the feet and then choked out on the ground. So it's not impossible for Bruna Brasil to land some big shot and win the fight off of that, but I'm going to have to go with Kong Wong. She's just way too good in the stand-up. And Bruna Brasil is not as much of a grappler as even Gabriela Fernandez was. So I'm confident with Kong Wong winning this fight, especially with Bruna Brasil moving up a weight class to fight her. So Wong is also going to have a size advantage, which is going to help her with any kind of takedown defense going into the fight. And they're going to Tom Nolan versus Slava Claus. Both guys don't like to go for takedowns. They like to just keep it standing. Tom Nolan has the size, the reach, the height, but Slava Claus is the faster fighter. He's more versatile. He's better with his combinations. He has more volume. He's better in the pocket. He's going to need to get the fight in close to land his best shots, but he has a good body kick, depending on which stance Nolan wants to take, because he will switch from orthodox to southpaw, looking for spinning attacks and body kicks and stuff like that, but he's more of like a one-shot fighter. Throws a flying knee, one elbow in close, spinning attack from distance. Sometimes he'll blitz with a combination, but that's more of Slava Claus's kind of style. Slava Claus will also switch sometimes, but he wants the open stance so he can land the body kick. And I think attacking the body is the biggest thing for him. Body punches, body kicks, as Tom Nolan raises his guard from the feints of Slava Claus, opening up the body, which will eventually open up the head later in the fight, and then the combination will start dinging him even more. So I'm gonna go with Slava Claus by unanimous decision. This should be an insanely good fight, man. And they're going to Jack Jenkins versus Gabriel Santos. Both fighters have good striking, both fighters can wrestle, although you don't see Jenkins go for takedowns that much anymore. Whereas for Gabriel Santos, he has attempted multiple takedowns in all 3 of his UFC fights. He's also more versatile with his striking, although I will say Jenkins has better fundamentals, he has better combinations. Santos has fast footwork, but not as fast with his punches. He has great kicks though, great front kick, just how he knocked down Yezia in his last fight. So Jenkins is going to want to get in close against his fast moving opponent who throws out a lot of kicks. He has good takedowns, and that's what actually makes it a very difficult fight for Jenkins, because from distance, Santos is going to be throwing a lot of kicks. Jenkins is going to want to get in close, and he could get countered by the takedowns, which could throw him off later in the fight from the punches of Gabriel Santos as well. But if he's ever able to back Santos to the fence, I think Jenkins will start winning the fight. But I'm going to go with Gabriel Santos by unanimous decision. And then we go to the main card, starting with Jake Matthews versus Francisco Prado. I'm going to go with Jake Matthews. His grappling is just the biggest difference there. If Matthews gets that fight to the ground, he could get a submission win right there. But Francisco has good striking, fast punches, very aggressive. Although Jake Matthews getting better with his striking, I think there's a difference in the confidence between the two fighters in the stand-up. So he could find some good counter punches. He has a very fast lead right hook on the back foot, but he's going to have to go to his takedowns once Francisco Prado starts implementing his pressure because he's throwing mostly power punches, trying to knock Jake Matthews out. So I'm gonna go with Jake Matthews here, getting the win by a second round submission. And then we go to Jimmy Crute versus Rodolfo Bellato. Jimmy Crute has no wins in his last 4 fights. Rodolfo Bellato is on a 4-fight win streak, so there's a big difference here in momentum and confidence going into it. But there could be a level of overconfidence for Bellato if he underestimates Jimmy Crute, because Jimmy Crute has good punching power, he has good submissions, he doesn't have great footwork. It honestly does look like his skills are declining. I mean, he got submitted by Alonzo Menefield. He went in for a takedown and Menefield got him in a guillotine. But the thing is, man, Jimmy Crute is the more skilled fighter. Like, he should be able to land his punches. Bellato doesn't move his head. Look at his fight with Ihor Potieria. Ihor was landing bombs on him. Bellato was not moving anywhere. He was standing right in front of him. He did block some of the punches, but if Jimmy Crute's throwing punches like that, Bellato cannot stand right in front of him, or he will get knocked out. It's just hard to be confident in Jimmy Crute winning the fight. I think he should win, mainly because Bellato's defense is just very one-dimensional. He'll move his head in moments, but mostly just picks his hands up and stands right in front of you. So I think Jimmy Crute is the better technical boxer, offensively and defensively. I think he has the better submissions. And if Ihor Potieria can drop Bellato and nearly knock him out because the guy just stands in front of you like that, Jimmy Crute should win the fight. So even though he has not won a fight since 2020, I'm gonna go with Jimmy Crute with a big comeback for his career, knocking out Rodolfo Bellato in the second round. And then go to Justin Tafa versus Talison Teixeira. Both guys are strikers. Talison Teixeira is gonna be much taller, 6'7", versus the 6-foot Justin Tafa. I mean, this is like very similar to when Mark Hunt fought Stefan Struve. I'm gonna go with Talison Teixeira. He's much longer, he's faster, he's overall more technical, although he can be wild in close range. And that's where Justin Tafa could land that southpaw left hand. So I do think that the reach and the height of Talison Teixeira should give him the advantage of winning this fight. And then we go to the co-main event. The strawweight champion Zhang Weili going to try to defend her title against the undefeated hype challenger that a lot of fans have been saying for a long time will be Zhang Weili's toughest fight in her career, Tatiana Suarez. Zhang Weili has the striking advantage, Tatiana has the wrestling advantage. She is deemed like the female Khabib, which I don't think so, but she does have that sort of aggressive, overwhelming wrestling style. She doesn't wrestle exactly like Khabib, but I would say she does have that general kind of style. She's not as much of a striker. She's not like super fast or super powerful with her punches. She doesn't get hit too much. You would think Zhang Weili will land more shots than any other opponent in Suarez's career. And that's the thing about Zhang Weili. She's gone against wrestlers before. She went against arguably the second best wrestler in strawweight history in Carla Esparza and absolutely destroyed her. Now Suarez is a much better wrestler than Carla, even beat her in that very skill set. She's bigger, stronger, and a better technical wrestler than Carla Esparza. And I think she will get the fight to the ground multiple times. It's going to be up to Zhang Weili to improve her wrestling at the high level that it already is in order to thwart the takedowns of Tatiana Suarez. And how good is her Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu get submissions off her back, or just try to reverse the position to get back up to the feet, because she needs to keep the fight standing at all times. Tatiana Suarez has never been 5 rounds before. Weili's been 5 rounds multiple times throughout her career. Her last fight was 5 rounds against Yao Xiaonan, always getting better with every single fight. I'm not really too confident in the striking for Suarez. I think Zhang Weili's going to absolutely dominate in the stand-up, but if the wrestling is just so overwhelming, then Suarez might be able to land some big punches and stun Weili throughout the fight. But we just don't know if she has the 5-round cardio to keep up that pace, because Weili's going to be in the fight the whole way through. So my prediction for the fight, I see that Tatiana Suarez is a favorite on some of these odds. It's pretty much a pick'em, but to see Suarez be a favorite on some of these lines is actually very interesting. I mean, she hasn't fought in a long time. She fights like once every 2 years. She's been in the UFC for many, many years, but only has 11 professional fights. Weili has over double the experience of Tatiana Suarez. She's been 5 rounds. She's more well-rounded. She's the better striker. She's very strong. I'm going to go with Zhang Weili by a 5th round TKO. I think Suarez is going to slow down in the fight, eventually gas out in the 5th, and Weili TKOs her. And then we go to the main event. Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland 2. Now, Dricus Du Plessis obviously is the more well-rounded fighter. He can strike and grapple both offensively and defensively. Not the most technical, but he is very effective because he's so physically strong. He's so powerful. He has great cardio, a good chin, and is as confident as ever. He can fight in both stances, and it's hard to know which techniques he's going to use to try to win the fight, because sometimes he'll just be throwing jabs and straights, but then sometimes he's headbutting your hip. Sometimes he face plants for an ankle pick, and that's not even exaggeration. He actually uses those techniques, if you call those fighting techniques, and they seem to work for him. For any other fighter, it'd probably get them knocked out, but for Dricus, it wins them title fights. But Sean Strickland's more of a striker. He has good takedown defense, not much of an offensive wrestler, but he's good offensively and defensively in the striking. And the thing that makes him a difficult fight for Dricus, there's something about Sean Strickland that's different than the other fighters that Dricus goes up against. Strickland will fight his game no matter who's in front of him. He will be jabbing and teeping, and most likely he will win the fight by doing that, which shows the efficiency he has in his skills, even though it looks like it's very limited. Offensively, yes, it is. He has a limited amount of weapons that he uses offensively, but defensively, he is one of the best. It's hard to hit him. He has a very good jab. It's kind of like that Bruce Lee philosophy. You practice a certain technique 1,000 times, it's more dangerous than someone who is like a jack of all trades, right? Someone who practices 1,000 different techniques one time. Strickland has one of the best jabs in the UFC. He has a very good front kick. He has a very good straight right. And that's why Strickland always will give Dricus a hard time in there, because Dricus likes to bring his opponent into his chaos and he beats them in that environment he thrives in. But he just can't seem to bring Strickland into that environment. Strickland, even though he's a chaotic talker, he doesn't fight chaotic though. He talks very different than how he fights. And I think that also throws off the opponent sometimes, because he says the wildest things in the press conferences, interviews, and stuff like that. But then he comes out there very measured. Dricus is like the opposite. He's very like cerebral and keen to the way he talks. It's a purpose of everything he says, right? But then he comes out there and he fights like a madman. Dricus fights the way Sean Strickland talks, because Dricus comes out there to bing bong boom his opponent and knock them out. It's like he doesn't even know how he does it. I mean, fighters talk about it all the time. Dricus has a very ugly style. Like, he fights untechnical, but he still wins the fight against the best fighters in the world. It's hard to game plan against him, but the best way to game plan against Dricus is to fight your own game and bring him into your style, which is what Strickland does better than anybody else. Strickland has the takedown defense. He's very good at getting up from the bottom. Shown in their first fight, Dricus could not hold him down at all. Puts together good counter punches. He should be able to win this fight. But with Dricus, you just never know what he's able to land, right? Maybe he lands a big overhand and just knocks Strickland out. It's a new fight, even if he fights the same way. In a game of inches, if Strickland moves his head just slightly too slow, an overhand can land on the chin and just KO him. So it's going to make it a difficult fight, but here's the thing. It looks like Strickland has staph infection on his left arm, so that could impact his cardio. At the same time, Strickland's coming in bigger for this fight, so he's probably going to have more punching power and better takedown defense at the beginning of the fight. If he starts gassing out because of the staph infection, the added size can actually cause him to gas out even more. So I'm going to go with Dricus Du Plessis by unanimous decision, but Strickland having staph infection is a big disappointment for this card. The card didn't have great quality to begin with, and now one of the main eventers might have staph infection. That is crazy. At least the co-main event is still good, and I think the main event is going to be a good fight regardless. And with that, let's go to the betting odds. So Dricus like a minus 210 against the plus 170 Sean Strickland. I think it's closer than that, but Dricus should be the favorite. Tatiana Suarez like a minus 120 against the plus 100 Zhang Weili. I'm surprised by those odds, man. I think Zhang Weili should be the favorite. So there's an underdog pick right there. Jake Matthews, a decent favorite against Francisco Prado, minus 245 against a plus 200. I agree with that. Jimmy Crute, the underdog. He's about like a plus 135 against the minus 162 Adolfo Bellato. I can see either fighter being the favorite, but I do like Jimmy Crute's chances in that fight. Telson Teixeira, a slight favorite. He's like a minus 140, minus 145. I guess a plus like 120-ish. Justin Tafa. I agree with that. Gabriel Santos, like a minus 230 against a plus 190. Jack Jenkins, I agree with that. Slava Claus, a minus 120 favorite against the plus 100 Tom Nolan. I agree with that as well. Kong Wong, the minus 400 against a plus 310 Bruno Brazil. I agree with that as well. But after losing to Fernandez, I don't know if she should be that big of a favorite moving forward, because she was an even bigger favorite for that fight and she got finished. So Alexander Topuria, about a minus 370 against a plus 290 Colby. Topuria being that big of a favorite, man, there's a lot of hype behind him, but I think he should be the favorite. Not that big though. I think Colby has a much better chance than the betting odds are giving him. Cody Steele, like the minus 235 against a plus 195 Rong Zhu. I agree with that. Kevin Jusei, the minus 245 against a plus 200 Jonathan McKelliff. I agree with that as well. Quinlan's like a minus 650 against a plus 470 Anshul Jubli. Not that big of a favorite, but he should win the fight. That's a really big favorite, man. That's like Islam Makhachev versus like Drew Dober or something, right? It shouldn't be that big of a favorite. And then Park Hyung-sung, a minus 230 against the plus 190 Niam Dragal. I agree with that as well. So I think the betting odds are decent for this card. Not too many underdogs, but there are a few that could win. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, make sure to give it a like, make sure to subscribe.